point is that some of the committee report has inflammatory statements, some omissions in it, some inaccuracies. And it's not the type of committee report that should accompany a $10 billion budget. But let me get into that a little bit later, though. Before that, let me say where the thing excels and where, I guess, if I would have started like the chair of finance, upbeat and go get 'em, I probably wouldn't even add some of the things that I'm going to add. But first, to thank the staff. Every year, Speaker, it gets better and better. And transparency and democracy and the voting and the interaction and the suggestions and even the welcoming of the new member from the minority, it's a good sign that things are coming. I was also very impressed that the most important issue faced by this body, the chair and the finance committee took by the horns, and that was, let's end the furloughs. And there's $50 million, which hopefully will be enough incentive to get the people around the table again and hopefully come to some resolution of getting our kids back in school. I've also applaud the surgical cut that the finance chair had stated. And some of us were very happy with what came out of it. Some of us were unhappy with what was in there. But the way that the whining record is recorded in the committee report, I think it leaves a lot to be desired. I want to also commend the chair for protecting our agriculture, aggressively attacking the invasive species, lending an ear to the poor, and specifically the most vulnerable who are young. But yet my colleague passed me a note and said, should the money from the Mililani track field or the Mililani turf field and track, could that have been used for these individuals, that money having already been funded? Lastly, kudos are also in keeping with keeping our libraries open and, very importantly, Speaker, funding our charter schools with a bit more money. Unfortunately, we've lost the first round of funding for Race to the Top, and that's $75 million, so the charter school funds would be very, very important. And kudos to the chair for reinserting money for the tourism office in Taiwan, and that the progenitor of our visitor to Waikiki is going to be a Chinese, and reopening that office is good. And restoring the aerospace office, albeit with small funds, to acknowledge that the future of travel is the space travel, and we have to get in on the ground floor. Having said this, Mr. Speaker, I have a few things about the disaffection with the budget regarding some inaccuracies and some omissions in HB 2200. First, as a parenthetical reminder to all of us, HB 2200 is not really a budget, it's a spending plan. Webster's dictionary defines a budget as a statement of financial position of an administration for a definite period of time based on estimates of expenditures during the period and proposes of the financing of them. A budget, therefore, is both an income and an expense statement. But what we have today is a spending plan, and until we see the side of the revenue side of the budget, we are discussing something that is more or less moot. And I should point out that when the governor's budget came down, there was a spending plan. We didn't all agree with it, but it showed where the money was coming from. And again, I would commend the staff that put a spreadsheet together the first day that the Finance Committee met in the first week of January, and the spreadsheet showed where the budget was going out and where the money was coming in. And Mr. Speaker, that is not here yet. The chair of finance is often quoting the saying, or he often says, the governor proposes, but the House disposes. Yet throughout the committee report, we were constantly reminded of the fault finding that the governor had, or she'd be given, and arguably the committee report became a political report. Conspicuously absent in HB 2200, and in the spirit of fairness should be mentioned, that the governor refused to make wholesale cuts to state workers. This budget, nor the committee report, acknowledges or references the critical role the governor played in implementing an early on and until this day a warm body policy to keep state workers employed. She refused to cut thousands of jobs to balance the budget from the get-go.
Representative Marumora, would you like to yield your time? I yield my time.
So ordered. Please
Thank you,
proceed,
Representative.
Representative Ward.
She refused to balance the budget from the get-go, and you will recall, Mr. Speaker, the formula for every $1,000 jobs cut is the equivalent of saving $43 million. Instead, we ended up with across-the-board cuts, many of which we were unhappy with, but we must not forget that the fundamental act of preserving these families' lifelines and housing and overall well-being was for the sake of state workers. It was not a one-size-fits-all. It was a plan to prevent massive unemployment in the state of Hawaii. Mr. Speaker, unemployment today is 7.3%, but if the governor would have put really the meat axe, as the finance chair said, to the state workers, we would be up to the national average of just a little bit under 10%.